Have you felt like you're doing everything right and your body still isn't cooperating? Maybe you've changed your diet, taken the supplements, run the labs, tracked the cycles, seen the specialist, and you still found yourself wondering, what are we missing? Today's guest, Tracy, has walked that same kind of search after cancer. Her story is a powerful reminder that whether you're navigating chronic illness, gut issues, inflammation, or fertility after vasectomy reversal, the real question is often the same. Are we chasing symptoms or are we getting to the root cause? If you've felt dismissed, discouraged, or stuck in a body that won't seem to heal, this conversation is going to give you hope. Welcome to Faith Over Pharma, the podcast for couples trying to conceive after a vasectomy reversal. I'm Susan Gladstein, holistic reproductive health practitioner, functional nutrition specialist, and your fertility detective. Around here, we talk about all the things mainstream medicine often misses and the faith that it takes to keep going when you wanted a baby like yesterday. If you're tired of being told to wait, to retest, or just move straight to IVF without anyone looking at the full picture, then you're in the right place. A vasectomy reversal can reopen the pathway, but it does not mean that every piece of the fertility puzzle has been addressed. If you are still waiting for pregnancy and every analysis, lab result, or clinic appointment leaves you with more questions than answers, the Rooted Fertility Audit is for you. Inside, I review all the things that most clinics are overlooking so you can better understand what may be helping, hurting, or holding you back. Because sometimes the thing standing between you and the baby you've been praying for is not one big obvious problem. It's the missing pieces that no one has yet connected. You can start your audit at susangladstein.com/fertility. Most people assume that once cancer treatment is over, the healing part begins. But what happens when you survive cancer and still don't feel well? When the treatments are done, the appointments slow down, and everyone expects you to just move on. But your body is struggling. Today's guest knows that story firsthand. I'm joined by beautiful Tracy, also known as Tracy the Hope Dealer, which I love. She's a certified health practitioner, detox coach, cancer thriver, and founder of Mosaic Wellness Hub. After being diagnosed with cancer at just 40 years old, going through surgery and treatment, and later facing years of gut issues, inflammation, and discouragement, she began searching for answers beyond just symptom management. And that search led her to root cause healing, cellular health, fasting, detox, and a deeper understanding of how the body can rebuild when given the right support. And today, through her signature program, the Art of the Restart Academy, she helps others break free from chronic illness cycles, rebuild their health from the inside out, and find hope again with faith at the center, which I love. And I am so grateful that you're here because you have an amazing story. I actually heard it on another podcast and was just like, oh my gosh, you have to come and share the story with us. So I'd love for you to just start there. Take us back to the beginning. What was life like before your diagnosis, and what led you to kind of seek out the more integrative and holistic healing instead of just staying with the conventional system?
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me, Susan. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. I was in my early 20s when I started to notice I had major gut problems. If I go back in my health history, Epstein-Barr, I believe, was the cause. I was a really healthy kid. And then what ended up happening is I got mono my senior year. It completely affected my track life and my kind of your senior year life. And by the time probably about a couple years later, I had multiple bouts of strep throat. And then I seemed to have I had food poisoning, and that then catapulted into this major gut issue. And I just remember waking up one morning and my stomach was completely bloated. And I was like 8 pounds, and I was going, why do I look 6 months pregnant? And so I started cutting out things. So I thought, okay, and here I was at that time probably 19 or 20. So you're like, I just won't, drink beer, or I won't have soda, or I won't have fast food, whatever it was. So it's sort of getting healthier in the process as a younger person. And, but I never really could get a handle on it. So by the time I was about 24, 25, I had multiple trips to the ER. I went to a couple different GIs, and their answer was always just eat more fiber. Use some Metamucil. So, which I did. I did all the things they said, thinking I'm thinking, well, wow, I'm getting healthier at such a young age. This is fantastic. I had just become a Christian at 20. So, I was really thinking I was going to get better, but it never really got better. By the time I was 29, at that point, was in personal training. I kind of changed from teaching to getting into health and wellness as a career and ended up with an appendectomy. So I had my appendix out. Then I was pregnant. And 10 years later, I find out I have colorectal cancer and I'm 40 years old. So I really, during that space of time, I never stopped trying. I was seeing a chiropractor, I did food sensitivity testing. I mean, if it could have been done, I tried it. I feel like now we have so many more resources, but back then it was like a lot of food sensitivity, elimination diets. I never could figure it out.
Man, as someone who has battled digestive problems for a majority of my life, like I can feel how aggravating and frustrating that is. Even, I mean, think about when you're young, what do you know? Especially like, I think we were about the same age, but like it just wasn't everybody ate packaged foods. We all
Yeah,
had Lucky Charms for breakfast. It was kind of
chicken
not,
nuggets.
yeah, it was not really, the way that like my kids are growing up now is wildly different. But I got on this kick of being in this healthy space in my 20s and like, oh, I've got these gut issues and I was having blood sugar problems. I was a Dr. Pepper addict, so that there was that. But I was constantly on this roller coaster. And to try to fix that, I was taking what I thought were these health foods. I'm going to have a protein bar or a smoothie or something beforehand, not realizing that the sugar, the sucralose in there was literally causing absolute havoc. But you think you're doing something right, and the doctors are telling you to do one thing, and you're doing that thing, and it's still not. I mean, that's kind of what has led me to this podcast and trying to get the word out that not all doctors look at things holistically.
Right.
They're trained in what they know. And if it's outside of that scope, there's probably not a lot they can do. Then they'll send you to a specialist, but then that specialist is often looking at things in isolation and not, So I would be curious to kind of walk through how that looked for you. And obviously, it led to what you're doing now and the passions that you
Yeah.
have. So I'd love for you to share more
Yeah.
about that.
So my first couple bouts of this crazy bloating was to the ER. I would be in excruciating pain. I literally would feel like my skin was so stretched. And it really led to a lot of disordered eating too. So it was like I was scared to eat, didn't know what foods were going to affect me. And it came much later that I realized it didn't really matter what I ate. The problem was a lot deeper, right, with my gut diversity and stuff. When I went to a GI, very much so, it was looking at only the digestive system rather than systemic inflammation and realizing that the oral microbiome plays a part, the gut microbiome plays a part, and then things like hidden infections and heavy metals, mold, that all of those things can be part of the story. And nobody was looking under those rocks at all. It was sort of like, we don't really have a medication, you have IBS, not much we could do, eat more fiber. So when I ended up, starting to after cancer, I think I would say, because then I just sort of gave up a lot of hope. I mean, I would do, I did probably three different food sensitivity tests and then went on these, again, disordered eating, right? You're doing all these elimination diets. So then then you're lacking minerals, vitamins that you need to thrive. And I was also in the health and wellness space. So there was a time I abused things like protein powders, protein bars. I mean, it was the bro science, right? Like you need to get up, you got to get your protein in and then just all those bars full of junk. So, when I was probably about 33, 34. I really wanted to do an all raw vegan diet. So I became mainly plant-based for a time. And still, that didn't help. So there was a lot of different things that I tried to see if I could fix the problem. But again, it was once I think I got cancer, it makes you take a little bit of a step back because I did lead a really healthy lifestyle for the majority of my 20s and 30s, I would say. And I had to go way beyond that and start to do different testing. Like I did heavy metal testing, started looking at environmental toxins, and I mean, most of the time I was doing things like using vinegar and water, and my laundry detergent was better quality. And I graduated from high school in 1992. So the only way you had resources was to walk into a small health food store that was in some obscure part of the country, you know what I mean? That you could never find anything, and then get these books that seemed very technical. And it was really hard. Nobody did online telemedicine. I mean, so we didn't have Instagram. So, like, you were sort of alone in the wild, wild west with this whole thing. And it was pretty much a desert, I would say. I mean, there wasn't a lot of resources. So, um, I think after cancer is when I started doing different testing. And then I started following Dr. Pompa and Dr. Mindy, and they were really big advocates on chronic health issues and using fasting and taking a deeper dive into systemic inflammation, which is the root cause of the issue. And also, I always like to say one size fits one. So, as a nutrition coach, I always approached every client like, you are not the same as this person. So, I can't use the same strategies with you. And I had to do that with myself too, that realizing that there's a lot of different things out there. Some are going to work. The person who can come up with that DNA test to be like, this is the diet for you, or this is the type of fast that's going to work. I mean, they'll make millions.
100%. Yeah, I think, and that's one thing that I've always been passionate about. You mentioned, like, you were in the health and fitness space, and I know when a lot of my own personal, like, I knew what to eat and I was teaching other people to do it, but I still had all this emotional eating baggage that I was holding on to that I didn't, it just magnified everything and made it so much worse. And so now I find that really looking at, I mean, we kind of have gone in this whole health and wellness space, and there's a diet, there's an exercise and whatever, but like even just the emotional and like the emotional and spiritual aspect is not as commonly, it's becoming more common in my world because it's what I like to talk about. But I think that it's important to understand, and I know that you talk about this where you take every thought captive. So when you're walking through sickness, fear, discouragement, there's stuff going on. What does it mean to take every thought captive to you?
Yeah, so I have a tool. I'm a life coach as well, and one of the tools I created was called Break the Stop Start Cycle. And that was a tool that I developed out of my own ability to kind of be able to press pause and be really aware of the things that I was thinking. And being able to approach things with gratitude and thankfulness, because when you do that, you take the power out of it, and it helps you to kind of not necessarily push down, but be able to offer space from those negative thoughts to something a little bit more light, a little more grateful. And I think for me, that started me on a journey of being able to say, okay, capturing the thoughts looks like press pause, you know, be aware. It's an ABC cycle. B is boundaries or breath work, I say. Sometimes you need that physical breath work and having those boundaries. C is curiosity. Get really curious about it, like asking yourself, what is going on here? Why am I believing this? Can I find hope in this? And asking yourself those good questions, like what and how and where. I always do say don't ask why, just because it does lead to paralysis of analysis. And then being able to, D would be like a discipline. And when I looked at that, what came to me was how often we'll cut, oh, I need to eat this way, or I need to do this exercise. I need to get up in the morning and have time with God. I need to do, and we have all these things we want to do. And I would notice that there would be two paths that I would go down. Yes, I need to be disciplined, but what would happen is if I had these emotions that were heavy, it was like I would either go destructive thinking, right? Like let me go back to destructive thinking, or let me distract myself. Maybe social media, shopping on Amazon, whatever your flavor is. And those things really then get you off track of breaking that stop start cycle and really what I call evolving, right? Evolving into the person that God ultimately made you to be. So for me, I think especially going through cancer, I spent time reading the book of Job and I learned a lot about him. It's funny because I always thought like, oh, Job is just, he was just this man that, was able to go through his pain and have such a positive attitude. But the thing was, he didn't. And so for me, it was kind of encouraging to be able to know that I could sit in this space with God and he was going to allow that, but not let me stay there. So I think working through that with my clients as well, because it's not just about lifestyle changes or the right supplements to get on. It really does start with what is going on between your ears and being able to turn those things inside out. And a lot of times we're just not even aware of what's going on.
Oh man, 100%. I talk about that a lot as well because it's really hard to heal from something that's become your identity. And I find that a lot in the spaces it relates to your health. Like you can identify as your diagnosis and then it becomes who you are. And so I really want to challenge that and people really look at whose they are.
Yeah.
And I'm also always advocating that all of those negative thoughts are from the devil. Like that's the only power the devil has over you. And to your point, sitting and reading Job, and he was just in so much despair that I think for me, I don't know, it's like growing up in the church and in my family, especially, we kind of like to sweep things under the rug and get along to get along kind of thing. And so it was always just put on a happy face. I don't want to make anyone upset. And so I would hold a lot just of what emotion, just hold it back, never expressing myself, crying and whatever. And really being okay with not being okay and
Yeah.
just like letting God have it. Like when I couldn't get pregnant and I had to go on a military deployment and I just wanted a baby like yesterday and it wasn't happening. I just let him have it. I was mad. I was angry and it was eating me up because I was so angry. And I tell that a lot to my fertility clients as well. It's like if like whatever you're saying in your head,
Yeah.
whatever you say, whatever you believe is what you will achieve, right? And so if you're in this negative state of you can't heal, you can't figure it out, you can't, you will act as if that thing or your body will protect you against that. I mean, I say that a lot in the fertility space. If you're like, I'm never going to get pregnant, well, your body's like, well, we better not get pregnant, right? So I always tell my clients, you have to act as if you already are that thing. And that is of the Lord when you start walking with Him, sharing your like garbage because He can
Yeah.
handle it. If you
And
hold
that's
all
really
of that,
intimacy, wouldn't you agree? Like
yes.
that's what builds the intimacy with God. It's not going to church on Sunday or having a prayer group. It really is when you are walking through life. obstacles come, and some of them are, big T traumas, and others are little T traumas. No matter what, it's the ability to be your authentic self and then being able to connect with him. And then that is really what grows your faith more, because otherwise it sort of becomes this like, he's up there and I'm here. And yes, I have a problem. I'm going to ask people to pray for me, instead of knowing that you can go to the source. And that is where you're going to have peace. You're going to find peace in those moments, suffering together, with the book of Job or whatever,
100%. Yeah, when I had a miscarriage, I was angry. Like, why, Lord, did you give this baby to me only to take it away? And he said, I know. I lost my baby too.
Right.
And it was in that moment when I actually had the courage to say what I was actually feeling and let it out. It's kind of like that stress bucket is just full of garbage until you let it go, and then you can fill in with the good stuff. So I know that in developing the art of the Restart Academy, there are some specific biblical principles that aligned with you that you have as part of that. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about that as well.
Yeah. So in 2016, this was about a year after I had cancer. My husband had gotten sick as well with something else, and I was at a women's event, and I was just praying about kind of like what's next? What do I do? And in this journal, they always give you a journal or something. I wrote the word mosaic, and there was this heart that was kind of up. At the ceiling of the church, like as a decoration, and it was a heart, and it looked like broken pieces. But when you could step back, you could see the big picture that it was a heart. And I thought that's exactly how I feel. I feel like I am broken pieces all over, and I don't even know how to put this back together. And there was a verse, 2 Samuel 12:16, and it says, stand still and see the great thing the Lord is about to do before your eyes. And for me, I thought, wow, I feel like I've never even seen this verse before. And I can't even tell you where or why that verse came to me. I feel like it was in a moment of a Bible study, and I was just kind of looking through stuff. And that became like my mission of like, I don't stand still very well at all. I'm a mover. Um, and to be able to see, to me, that's where hope is. Sometimes people think hope is this lazy, passive word. I think it is one of the most active words, because to have hope, you have to believe that there's something better on the other side. And you have to be willing to walk through the darkness in order to get on the other side. So that verse really became, I think, significant for me. And then as I began Art of the Restart Academy, to realize that I could start again. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes you have to step back. Sometimes God's asking you to wait. But that always that like perspective of keeping hope forward, it's okay to start again. It's okay to have to press the restart button, because as somebody who, when you have chronic issues or you've had miscarriages, starting again emotionally feels heavy. But if we can give ourselves permission that this is what our life is about, sometimes we're hitting the restart button because we have to learn something. We have to be able to grow in a different way. It's maybe for us to help somebody else. That is one of the reasons that I thought, okay, this is what we're gonna do. Art of the Restart. There's an art and a science to it.
There sure is, and it is so true that it, I feel like I've heard the most clearly and loudest from the Lord when things were the worst, like the hit the rock bottom. But it's so true that when you get still, which is hard to do,
Yeah.
and you kind of realize, I think the other thing that I like to talk a lot about, and in thinking about that hope, because that was a big thing for me, thinking about like I want this baby and everything else had lined up, and why is it not happening? There's got to be some kind of purpose to this plan. And I just kind of went into it as like, okay, I don't know what the plan is. Like, I'm going to trust that I'm going to take the next step because I think sometimes if we knew what the path was, we would never take that first step, right? And so for me, it was really like trusting and saying whatever it is. But I know someone who gave you the like Hope Dealer. Like, tell us about that story because I think it's
Yes.
such a powerful thing. And we want people in our corner when we are struggling
Yeah.
in that who are going to speak and breathe life into us. Because if you get in Facebook groups with a bunch of other sick people, there's
Oh,
going to be a lot of sick talk, and that's
yeah,
not
there is.
what you need. And so you need somebody like you who is a
Mhm.
hope dealer breathing life into you. So tell me about that story.
Yeah. So I joined a lot of Facebook groups because I ended up with a permanent colostomy bag. And I remember feeling like my whole life was altered. And then I got into those groups and I was like, this is gross. I can't deal with this. So my husband would be like, maybe you should go to support groups. I was like, oh no, we're just going to figure this out. But I had a client and I was her personal trainer. We did life coaching. We kind of did a couple different things together, nutrition. And one day she said to me, Tracy, you're my hope dealer. I'm just going to start calling you Tracy the Hope Dealer. And I was like, I'm going to steal that. Like, that's so fun. I love it. And I always get such a good response when people hear that. And I felt like, that is one thing I feel like I can bring to the world because I've always felt like I want to make a difference. I want to be able to help people feel like it's not lost. Things are not lost. You can start again. And I think as I've worked with clients, one of the first things I notice is, when I do a clarity call with somebody, is really be able to see if we're aligned because you don't have to come in with like this positive attitude, but I need to know that I'm going to be able to work with you and you are prioritizing your health, like this is the time, and you're also ready to do some hard things in order to get better. And then I could be able to support you in that, empower you, that you can lose that weight again, that we can help you with those gut issues, that you're able to wake up again, even though you've gone through menopause and not have brain fog or joint pain. Like, this is not something you have to live with. Let's go to work together collaboratively and figure out how to make you feel like yourself again.
And I think, unfortunately, the I don't know, the I'm not sure what the word is. I don't know if it's distrust, although that is an explanation of how I feel just about the mainstream. But I think so many people, they seek that out. They don't get what they're looking for. They don't get better. A lot of times it gets worse. And so you can look at, paying someone like yourself out of pocket that's not covered by insurance that maybe a little bit, a little off of what, they're used to as far as like just take this pill for this ill. And that can be, yes, you have to be ready and willing, right? And I think sometimes that is a hard thing for people because a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. Like I didn't know how bad I felt until I felt good. So
Yep.
if there's somebody that's listening and they feel like their diagnosis, symptoms, health history has become her identity, or they're struggling in having hope, what would you want to say to that person today?
Well, I think when you believe an illness, I like to call it a lie identity instead of an identity. So you're believing the lies, um, and really stepping into that God identity. Who does God say that you are? So that's something, right? You don't have to wear this as a badge of honor. And a lot of times traditional medicine will say they're amazing for acute situations, but for chronic issues, that is not what they're educated in. And so it can feel very much like this is just what I am. Like I have IBS, I have Hashimoto's, I have ADHD. and you wear that. And there's a time I think it's important to educate yourself on that. So if you get a diagnosis and you're like, I need to learn and I'm going to read every book I can and look at all these people, but then you have to be like, how do I find a solution? And oftentimes in the medical space, it's you just have to live with this. This is it. And I don't believe that. I feel like God has created our bodies to heal. And there is things sometimes we have to do from a multi-therapeutic approach. You did not get here because of one thing. Usually the bucket got full and it kept getting full and your body didn't know what to do with it. And now you have a problem and now it's overflowing. So how do we stop that? How do we put a valve in there, or put a plug in there so that you can stop with this overflowing bucket and start to really feel the benefits of healing. So some of those things are going to be lifestyle changes. Maybe you've tried some things, but maybe there's other strategies that you need to be willing to kind of try and see. Um, Also, I think targeted supplementation that works for building your gut microbiome. It's focused not just on, oh, I have, Hashimoto's, I'm going to take iodine, or I'm going to take, I'm trying to think of like something that comes to mind, like different glandulars or whatever. I'm going to fix my IBS by doing a probiotic. Like it's not a one-off. That's the thing. Oftentimes, I'm sure you get this too. A client will, oh, I saw this, like, does this work? And it's like, it's not one thing. And so, I would say that you just have to stay the course with this. It didn't take one day to get to this point, but now it's bad enough that you're searching for alternatives. I mean, by the time they get to me, they have searched for alternatives. They have tried the traditional medicine. They have done all those things. I mean, that's part of the reason why I went this direction, because I was a personal trainer and a nutrition coach and all of that stuff, but I felt like I couldn't help some of my clients feel better, because even though maybe they're coming to you for personal training, they're talking to you about, I can't sleep and I don't feel good. And yeah, every time I eat, I'm bloated or I have constipation. And there were times that, you give your suggestions or your things, but when I healed my body from SIBO, that to me was like a game changer. I was like, okay, like now I need to learn more. I need to understand how to help other people, because I just kept seeing more and more people suffering. And I think it's becoming an epidemic. I mean, we see that in the statistics of the chronic health industry exploding because there's so much more obesity. And I think now, unfortunately, people are looking to shots, they're looking to peptides, they're looking to HRT. They're looking to GLP-1s, which is a peptide, but they're looking there as an answer to something that is again going to be a band-aid, because what is the root issue? Let's try to fix the root issue. It doesn't mean you can't maybe utilize some of those things maybe for a short period of time, but I really do think that you have to be willing to get to the root cause to ultimately feel better in the long run.
100%. And I think some of that's just like education because I don't know. I mean, we've all just like been told to listen to our doctor
Yeah.
and that's the end all. And yet you're living in your body and you know what's going on. And a lot of times you may get shut down. So if that's you and you're listening, like
Mm.
find a different provider. If that
Yeah.
I've
Advocate for
fired
yourself.
several,
I
yes.
I always say the doctor works for you. So you got to go in there like a boss babe. You got to go in there and you have to be able to have some really good questions, have some solutions like here, I'm curious about this, I'm curious about that. So you can take your health back, because you are the one living in your own body. And so you do have the answers. God has given us the ability to listen to ourselves. There's an innate intelligence in our body that can heal. Doctors are a vehicle that can help us navigate things, and just like a holistic, health practitioner can. But you have to know that ultimately there's an innate intelligence in your body that wants to heal.
Well, and I know that that's something that you're really passionate about is helping people advocate for their health. And so I would wonder what is just maybe one simple step that somebody could take that would help them to start advocating for their health?
I think that going in with an understanding of what is going on with you and having some good questions before you get there. I do think that there is value in AI. I do think you can take some of your symptoms, some of your things, something I've heard this, maybe it's this, whatever, and cover all bases and put it through, Claude or Grok or ChatGPT, just because it will help empower you to feel like if you go into the doctor and the solution, the answer is, oh, you're just going to have that. It's just what it is. Or, that you have, here's a pill to help this situation. I think ask more questions, right? Like being able to really understand that you have the ability to also have some tools, also have some questions so that you can dig deeper. And I would say go to a couple different people too. Like if you're getting like I get a lot of people on TikTok asking about things with their like their stool and things like that. And I'm always like, did you ask for a colonoscopy? Well, the doctor said I'm only 28 and I no, like you need a new doctor. Like you are the one that's going to be paying for this. So ask for the blood work. Get the colonoscopy. I mean, these are tests that you can get, and that way you have more information to know how to advocate for yourself in the next steps.
100%. I love that. And I know somebody is listening and they're like, okay, I need to talk to her. I need her help. So tell us how we can get in touch with
Yeah.
you and all the things.
Yeah, I offer a 20-minute complimentary call where I just like to listen to you tell me about kind of your post-it note version of your health story. And then, we'll see if what I offer aligns with you. I offer three different programs, a detox program, if that's 5 months, a 5-month detox program. I do a 90-day diet and fasting program and then a 30-day protocol fix. So usually we spend time on that call. And then you can book that at mosaicwellnesshub.com. You can find me on social media, Tracy the Hope Dealer. Yeah, that's it.
I love it. I'll make sure all that's included in the show notes. But before we jump off, is there anything else that you wanted to add? This has been so good. Like, I feel like we're like, yes, 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 about all the things.
Do
Like,
it.
you and I are like, yes, eye to eye.
Let's do it. Yes. Um, I would just say it's never too late to start again.
Man, so good, so true. And I think again that first step, and even you talked about that when you have tried so many times and it didn't go the way that you wanted it to go, or maybe it wasn't successful, or like in my case, I had a miscarriage. And so when I got pregnant again, like everything, I was just kind of holding my breath. And in my case, I realized one day that my due date was the same date that I had miscarried, and I felt like it was like a God wink, like, trust me, everything's going to be okay. You don't need to worry. And I think that sometimes if we let that voice of fear, let the devil in that talks all that negativity, we can drown out what the message is that the Lord's really trying to give to us. And I think that's also why it's so important to work with someone like you who is going to deal the hope, because
Yeah.
that's truly, truly what you need. There's so many emotions that aren't always addressed in a diet plan or an exercise plan, but that's so like crucial to who we are and in our healing. If you don't believe that you can be healed, then I'm sorry, you could ask people to pray for you all day long, but if you don't believe it for yourself, it's not going to happen, which is a
Right.
really hard thing to tell somebody you care about. Like,
Yeah.
I will pray for you, but if you don't believe it for yourself, sorry,
Yeah. Yeah. You
so you really
absolutely
do have
have
to
to.
believe.
You do. You do. And you have to, I think you have to be your own best detective with, I mean, I still, even to this day, I mean, like this month, it was like I got my blood work done, I got my thyroid tested, I got, we just did this COVID spike protocol that like we just sent the post test. I did a biome test. I mean, I'm always like, okay, like let's see where we're at. Am I going in the right direction, with my body and my healing? Because as you get older, obviously our cells are not the same as they were when we're younger. So being able to, be your own best detective, listening to, I think things that are going to compel you forward and keep the hope in the journey, is super important because the negativity, I mean, we know this, thoughts have energy, they have pathways, and those things will affect your physical body. So you have to realize that both of those things are important. It's not just about the body and it's not just about the mind. Like all of it needs to come together and be integrated so that you really can, embrace a life of wholeness.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point too that I was thinking about earlier, and I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about. It's like you can also be like, you can be doing all of the healthy things and everything in your control. Like you've gotten, you get a cancer diagnosis and you're doing all the things and whatever, but that in of itself may actually be causing more harm than good if it's causing a lot of stress in your body and you're trying to control a lot of things. And some of that is just like relinquishing that and not being completely over the top and allow your body to heal. I was thinking about that earlier because I know people who they do all the things, but almost to the extreme that I know if I looked at their blood work, it would tell me that it's a very stressed body, even though everything they're doing is healthy.
Clean and yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that surrendering is probably um I think that that is a path of healing right there because all too often we're holding tight. And if we can just relinquish control, again, it doesn't mean you can't advocate, doesn't mean you shouldn't be a detective of your own body, but being able to surrender to the process. I have a bracelet that says enjoy the journey. And I used to say that to my kids all the time, like, well, enjoy the journey. Because in the hardest times, the journey is the thing that you look back on. Maybe not in the moment, but you look back on the journey and you're like, oh, I learned a lot. Or that's the wisdom. Those are the pearls that you can give somebody. So if you're able to find joy in the journey, um, I think that really helps you to manage those emotions much more effectively.
So true and so good. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to spread all of this hope and love and light to my audience. I'm so grateful for you and that our paths have crossed, and hopefully we can do this again.
Yes. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Faith Over Pharma. If this episode gave you hope, clarity, or helped you look at fertility differently, share it with a friend who's trying to make sense of the waiting and all the conflicting advice. And if you're ready to discover what may be standing between you and the baby you've been praying for, head over to susangladstein.com.
Thanks for listening.